My name is Aksik, aka Annika. Welcome to my channel, and here we mostly talk about adult coloring and art materials and art and sometimes history and whatever pops into my head really while I'm coloring. And today I decided to finally go back to my long-lasting series of all my art materials. I have taken a bit of a break of that because I did this really long 3-episode overview of my pencils, and I was kind of drained after that, so I thought, I'll take a little bit of a breather, and now I'm back. And I decided that today I'm going to talk a little bit about my water-soluble crayons and gel crayons, which of course are also water-soluble. So what's there to talk? Well, there would be a lot to talk, but I'll try to be, not overly wordy. Let's start with kind of a first thing that I have next to me here, and I'll show you. Okay, nothing is usually, in my case, in its original packaging, although these some things are kind of close, but these ones definitely aren't. One of the reasons they're not, they actually come, these are Neocolor 2s, and they usually come in really nice kind of metal box with 2 trays where they're really conveniently placed. So if I had actually bought them in a case, I probably would have never taken them out of that. They would still be there. But I have bought them kind of one by one, or, a couple of them at the time. So I basically I'm storing them in this. I think those are mostly meant for cosmetics and that sort of a, kind of bathroom organizing and whatnot, the little shallow acrylic drawers, which are transparent, which is super convenient because I can see exactly what's there. I can't really put it onto its side because then all the crayons get all messed up, and kind of, but you can see there's 3 drawers there. I'm doing it very carefully so everything wouldn't flip in there. And first, top drawer has, my warms. Then the second drawer has my cooler tones, and the bottom drawer has earth tones. So, for me, this is a really convenient system. And it's basically, on my desk on top of the pile of other little drawers like that, which have other kind of stuff in them, from washi tapes and, bits and bobs. And, if I use them, I put them essentially, in front of me like that or next to me, and I just keep pulling out the drawers and using them from there. They are really highly valued in the coloring community and are firm favorites of many. I have to say that for me, I do like them, but I underutilize them. I should really kind of lean onto them more heavily than I do, and kind of, work the kinks out for myself, because one of the main reasons I got them and, I wanted them and wanted to learn with them is that I saw all those people doing all those amazing backgrounds, putting down loads of different Neocolor to, kind of a thick layer of them, and then activated them with the brush, water brush, and they got those beautiful multicolored, sometimes textured, sometimes very smooth, lovely backgrounds. And to me, like, I just don't have the knack yet. I probably haven't practiced yet enough with them, but yeah, I would kind of find that troublesome. My backgrounds never come out the way I want. I find it hard to keep my brush, they kind of, I don't even know how to describe, what is happening, especially if you're working in between things and not in a big area. In a big area like this, they're super easy. They just dissolve fantastically fast and smooth, and give beautiful gradients. But if you do a big background with them, you get those sharp edges if you don't work fast enough, and they're splotchy, and I have to put down at least 2 or 3 layers. So I am honestly saying that this is my fault because I just haven't practiced enough with these. I do like them, but for actual kind of a basing and coloring more than I like them for backgrounds, which, I got them for backgrounds. These are all the colors I have. So I mean, kind of come a bit more up here. So this is the swatch. So these are the colors I have. I'm not sure, 100% sure if the full set is 80 or 90. Doesn't really matter. I can put it in the subtitles here if I remember to do that. But I don't have the full set, and I don't think I need the full set. Like, to me, that's enough colors, because it's a water soluble and mixable material. So there is really no need to have huge amount of absolutely every single color, because you can essentially mix them. For me, that is plenty of colors. I might get like, I would really like to have kind of Caput Mortum, which I know now they released the new ones, and I think, I don't remember how many colors. Was it 12 colors they released kind of for their anniversary? But I really hate the way they did it. They essentially did 4 themed sets, and each of these 4 themed sets, which has, I think, gosh, I don't remember, was it 10 or 9, has only 3 new colors, which means that if you want to have all the new colors, I wouldn't, but there were a couple of colors that I was interested in. I would need to get all 4 sets, which are not cheap. So I thought that this was really predatory and nasty tactic, and it kind of put me off Neocolors and Caran d'Ache all together for a while. I just, did not like the way they did it. So yeah, quite annoyed with them. And then there's one little kind of a tip. These being the artist quality ones, the fancy ones, the expensive ones. And then there's these, which are also by Caran d'Ache, and they are called Swisscolor Aquarelle. And I'm going to open the thing. There's 15 of them. They're very primary. So, no difficult colors, but difficult colors could be mixed, although there's a bit of a shortage of darks here, but, never mind. As far as the, how much there of the crayon there is, it's about half of the size of the Neocolor 2 crayon, okay? But the thickness is essentially, if you look like this, the thickness is the same. And I was wondering for a while, what's the difference between them, like these are supposed to be kind of a student or kids quality, and these are, of course, kind of artist quality. And to me, there's pretty much, these, of course, you can get. Nothing by Caran d'Ache is particularly cheap, but they are a lot cheaper than, you would get your Neocolor 2s. But the main difference is, one, there's less of the material. But to me, if you actually work with them or put them down, there is no huge difference between the output, how they dissolve, the color vibrancy. I kind of suspect that it's essentially the same thing, kind of same formula. The difference is that if you want to pick up, like with Neocolor 2, you can pretty much pick up with a water brush from any part of the crayon. So you can do this. You can just put your water brush against the crayon directly, pick up the pigment and paint right away. But even then, you're better off working from the area that has already been kind of put on the paper and rubbed on the paper a little bit, so the pigment has been kind of exposed. There's a little protective coat on the crayon. But with these ones, probably because they are kind of aimed towards kids, they have a stronger, kind of almost a waxy protective coat on the sides. So if you try to pick anything up from the side, like there's nothing, absolutely nothing. But if you turn it like this and put it onto the actual crayon, you can pick up the color the same way, like you would, oops, no, the focus is going. See? And look how pigmented it is. And, you know, essentially you can work with them the same way. So the trick would be, if you want to get kind of more surface to pick up the color directly from the crayon, then you need to kind of rub it on the paper and kind of make, you know, kind of rub off. You can of course do it in type of a pencil sharpener as well, but I wouldn't really kind of bother. I would just kind of rub some of the side wax off onto the paper, and then you can work directly from it. And these ones are nice if you want to just, you know, kind of a small, really contained, really kind of a handy little set that you can, you know, take with you when you're traveling. You know, if something happens to them, or if they you know, even get lost or kind of a bit smushed in luggage while you're traveling, you wouldn't be as annoyed as you would be if the same thing happened to your Neocolor tools. Of course, also other thing is that because of that kind of waxy layer, you know, it also strengthens them, so they don't break as easily as these ones sometimes do. So I find them actually very nice. The color palette is essentially exactly what you see because you see, you know, pure color here. So, you know, obviously, you know, you have the main primaries, so you can mix essentially anything. To me, it's a really good little contained set if you just want to have, you know, something small, or if you really want to have good quality water soluble crayon, but you can't really, you know, kind of your budget can't stretch to these ones, then these ones, you know, would fill the gap until, you know, if you, you know, first you can try out if you actually like them, because as I said, I thought I would use them much more than I actually am. But, you know, maybe you like them a lot, maybe you don't, but you can essentially try out how they work, and they do, you know, have, to me, pretty much the same pigment output and the same kind of a solubility as the Neocolor tools. So if you want to try out Neocolor tools, okay, they are not Neocolor tools, but, you know, something that is very, very like Neocolor tools in both quality and how they work, but you don't want to kind of spend big bucks right away, then get yourself that little set. It's 15 Swisscolor Aquarelle. And, you know, as I said, really handy small thing to stick into your bag if you just, you know, want to take your coloring book, your water brush, piece, you know, a couple of serviettes, or kind of a packet of tissues, and you know, this little set, and you're flying it. So there, of course, you can do the same thing as, okay, this is a little, I do tend to prefer to use them if I kind of use them as watercolors. I like in some coloring books like opaque paints better than they like, for example, more transparent ones, especially if the paper is thin or if the paper has a tendency of breaking to those kind of a dark dots. Then sometimes that can be prevented by using that type of a more opaque water-based material, which also, you know, you don't use as much water on it. So here we go. I'm going to make a pink cat. As this paper does tolerate water, but it does tend to sink in pretty fast. So you have to be I have to kind of get wise about how you use water. As I said, you know, it will allow you to watercolor, but you can see yourself that the paint tends to kind of sink in pretty fast and, you know, not really able to move much. And in these instances, you also cannot, you know, rub it much or try to move it much, because that paper is not meant for heavy manipulation when it's wet. And if you try to do that, then you're going to end up with pilling or just destroying the paper surface altogether. So I tend to kind of mix them on the palette, because, you know, often I like to mix paints on the paper, but in these instances, you know, if the paper is like it is here, this is not really an option. So I need to kind of, if I want to do mixes and play with them, then I'm better off doing it on the paper. But often, you know, on a paper like that, you're actually better off putting down the crayons on the paper itself and kind of quickly dissolve them. I'm going to show you, because you kind of will apply, it's going to be more opaque layer and you will apply less marker, or sorry, less water while doing that. So let me see, there's something missing here. Let me see if I can put maybe down some orange just for funsies. And that's what I'm talking about, you know, how you tend to get harsh edges. So you have to work fast and do a bit of manipulating and kind of apply a bit of a force to make sure that things are kind of moving around well. So my water brush is it was a bit dry, and, you know, you could almost immediately feel it. Now, and you get a base here like this. And I might even put some extra orange here on the tail as well, just a little bit. Okay, but you actually need to kind of manipulate and rub the paper less if you put the pigment down directly. So what color are we going to make this cat? Let's do some orange. And I'm just putting color in random spots. I haven't thought anything through, as is very typical for me. But I do want to put some color variations down, so. And because I'm going to be dissolving it and evening it out as I'm dissolving it, I don't need to put it down like super evenly and, you know, cover every single bit of the paper. But I do have to have enough of the crayon down so I have something to actually dissolve. Now, and I'm going to possibly put down some really bright yellow, which is called, what is it, golden yellow. Just, you know, have fun yoga cats. And I want to probably have some pink as well, I think. Oh, the toes. I think I'm going to put down some yellow there too. And some pink. Let me see. Here in the ears. And you can see I didn't really put it down in any way organized manner. I just dropped it in. And all the work there is going to be done with the brush. And I'm making sure that my brush is clean and that my water is flowing in the brush, doing the lighter colors first. This should be the rule. If you dissolve any paints or anything directly on the paper, always start from the lightest parts and then move on to darker areas so you wouldn't contaminate. You know, if you actually want those colors to be light and bright, then if you start from them, you won't contaminate those colors with the darker color. But here I'm not trying to do a blend, although it would be very easy to do a blend. But you can see how I need to manipulate and rub the paper way less if I put them directly on the paper. So I am now I have started to learn a bit and getting a bit better about dissolving the Neocolors directly on the paper like this. As I said at first, you know, when I started, that I was absolutely rubbish at it. I have kind of practiced a little bit with kind of a smaller areas like this, so I should probably try now eventually, and I'm going to dissolve those pinkish areas first. I should probably try now again with some background, you know, how it would work for me now. Maybe it's gotten better in the practice. I was just put off by a couple of pretty awful backgrounds I achieved, and I had to work over several times and add some other media so they would look halfway decent. And I kind of gave up for a little while. And you can see how easily and how well they dissolve. So they are a really pleasant material for creating a base. And now if after I let it dry, I could have put on shading down right away. At the moment I just did a kind of a flat base here. And either I will go on top of it with pencils, or I let it dry and then put in shading with Neocolors as well and dissolve it separately. But I could have done, you know, shading, you know, I would have, if I wanted to put kind of darker areas here and some places, it would have been very easy to put the shading down right away as well. So they are very useful, and I really should play with them more. And I've kind of promised myself now several times that I will try to utilize more the stuff I do have, because I have neglected them and I'm kind of feeling a bit bad about that. So, because it is a high quality and really nice material to work with, so there's really no reason to just let it sit on my desk and not do anything with it. This one has occasionally kind of got some even more use because it's so small and handy, and I have taken it with me a couple of times and used it in the base, but I haven't actually used the Neocolor tools very much. Okay, so this much, you know, about Neocolors. Like, there's so many different opportunities and so many things you can do with them, and I need to just crack on and start doing them because, as I've said, I have been a bit neglectful of them. Now, next thing, and this is all water-soluble crayons, like few crayons I do have. Now we're moving on to a different types of product, and let me kind of go up a bit. And these are gel crayons, okay, and I have different types. Technically they are all water soluble as well, but I do not like how they behave with water. You get this okay, these are now the famous gelatos. It all started with these, and I have them for years and years and years and years. I first, you know, got them and used them mostly kind of a mixed medium, and I was still doing that, and that was like a decade ago. So I've had them for longest time. Now they tend to be not as easily available anymore, but they were great, yeah, to put down backgrounds. You know, one of the first ones that you could just, you know, easily go over with your finger, and this is mostly how I use them. I didn't really use them much dissolving with water, but let me show you. You can dissolve them with water, and these ones aren't too bad, but you do kind of need to be a bit careful because they tend to have this, they're pretty thick, and if you move them around, they tend to get this kind of a, sometimes this soapy, smeary feel. They don't have the same feel as the Neocolor tools, which kind of are opaque-ish, but they do essentially dissolve into kind of watercolory consistency. These ones are a bit more gloopy, if that's probably the best word to describe it. So I do not tend to, especially directly, you know, like this on the paper, I almost never do that. And they also can leave sometimes, even after dissolving, a bit of a, like a slippery surface, which doesn't really like pencils on top particularly. So yeah, I very rarely do that. But you can also, of course, pick them up directly from the stick. I called them lipsticks when I first got them. That's what they look like, and that's how they operate. And then you get, you know, you don't get as intense of a color as you do if you put them directly on the paper, but you won't get the gloopiness like this. But I don't really use them like this. I almost never use them as watercolors. I do use them dry, which is my favorite method of using them. I'm going to show you in a minute, but not specifically with possibly these ones. So I have loads. I think at some stage I had pretty much most of, you know, what was at the time available. My favorites tend to be nowadays the metallic ones, the metallic set, which at first, actually, when I got them, I was kind of sorry that I got them because I almost never used it. And now I use this one a lot. There's, I think 6 metallic colors, I think I have. And I don't really use them that much in backgrounds on their own, but I like to use that through stencil quite a bit. So there's different kind of a metallic tones here, which I really like. I like even that kind of a metallic icy blue, which is really beautiful. It's called metallic blueberry. And this purple, yeah, there's at least 6, you know, because these are 6. Oh, there's actually more, because there's silver here as well, and there's green. It might be 8. Oh, that's also metallic, yeah. So I have quite a bit of metallic ones, but I do like them, and I do like them specifically if, let's say, I put down the plain acrylic flat background, matte one, and it can look boring. Then these ones will show up really nicely without being overwhelming or very strong on that surface. If I put them down through with a brush through on dry now, I mean, through the stencil, and they look really nice like this. But this is not just specific for these. I also love this color, which is metallic pink, but you know, I love that they're slightly muted. You know, they're not super bright metallics. You can see it's a beautiful color. Yeah, they are, you know, you can see that I've used them quite a bit, you know, they're all a bit, they're getting old, but, you know, I'm fine with it. And then I have a bunch of primaries and these ones, which I think came pretty much mostly in one set, and which I don't really use because I don't really like these colors much. So they're kind of useless in my collection. I'm mostly using the metallics from as far as gelatos go. I have used the darks occasionally and blues, but you know, there's colors there that I will probably never use and which are just kind of going to waste. But this is the problem of sets, you know, you have certain colors that you know you're going to use, but they come only in sets with other stuff. And then there's these ones here. So there's 2 different types of product here, but once again, essentially the same thing. These, that handful here, are what they are calling Bible highlighters. And these are now strictly for backgrounds for me. I know that some people put them down like this. You know, they are easier, of course, to put down than, let's say, gelatos or one other product I have to show you after this, because they're pretty slim. So you can get in pretty tight areas with them. And then once you have them down, you can kind of soften them out with a finger like this, or you can grab a cotton bud and do that tightening with these, kind of smoothing it out. Because they're so soft, they're very muted, very soft pastel colors, which is why I got them. They blend with each other super well, and you can essentially do that in a paper like that as well. And then you just, you know, if you want to, you can do it with finger. With finger, usually it's the fastest. And then you need to leave it alone. After you've put it down like this, you don't go messing with it. You don't go coloring the image that is, you know, inside that background, because they need to dry for about, I would say, at least 12 hours. I usually leave them for a day and then go in, and then they kind of settle, because unlike oil pastels, these actually settle. You know, at first they're kind of feel like they won't. They kind of feel creamy still, you know, even if they're on the paper. But if you leave them to be, they will dry, they will settle, and they, you know, even, you know, hand moving over it won't disturb it anymore. And you can even get pencil on top of them. But pencil will go on top of them better if you use a different method, which I'm going to show eventually. These ones are Tim Holtz distress crayons, which are really expensive, especially in Europe. Well, I don't know, I have seen really good deals of them on Amazon.com, and I really like them, but I just, you know, can't justify the cost of them. I like the colors, I like distress colors. I like the fact, the same way that, you know, you can either put them down directly on the paper like this, because they are a bit slimmer, you can actually kind of get around and blend them in around fairly detailed image. But even they, well, I usually prefer to put down with the brush, which I'm going to show you in a minute. I think the results are just better with the brush. They don't blend as nicely directly on the paper. The only ones that really blend seamlessly on the paper like this, I find, are those super duper pale ones, because they are obviously the lightest. Between these Bible highlighters and distress crayons, if you apply them directly on the paper, these ones actually give you, as you can see here, kind of smoother and softer blend, but that's mainly because they're so light and so muted that you can't almost even see the transition anyway. So they all blend better if you apply them with a brush. But yeah, as I said, I really like the distress crayons. I like the colors, I like the consistency, but I don't like the price. And therefore, I only have this one set and probably will never have any more, unless I come across, some color set. I also don't like, all of the sets. There's certain sets I like the colors more in. And if I come across with a set I really love and, for some reason it has a really good discount, I might consider it, but I certainly won't pay the prices that are they are available in Europe. They are just not worth it, especially considering how they look long, okay, and they look like they have. Okay, now this one. Okay, but there's not really a huge amount of actual material in them. Like, I don't remember, I tested once that I was kind of unimpressed how much there was. Like, that's it. That's all there is. That's, very little compared to both gelatos and, everything else. So I don't think that they are worth the price. Absolutely not. It's a bit of a gimmick in that way. The prices they're charging for it, it's kind of one of those predatory pricing tactics again. They're essentially charging you for, the name and the brand, but there's not that much product in there. The colors are good and I like the consistency and everything, but they are not consistency-wise any better, for example, than those Bible highlighters. So, yeah, a bit annoying, but what you gonna do? And then the last one here, before I actually kind of let's try to do eventually a bit of a background with them. The last one, okay, I need to lift again. Lift. And even then it's going to be a bit tricky, is this one. Okay, let me put it down like this so you can see. So that's an acrylic box, which is basically a fridge organizer, because I like these. I have loads of these in my craft room for kind of propping things up and storing things in. Pretty much loads of my stuff is stored like this. Because transparent, you can see what's in there. And these are Kingart gel crayons. And I think amongst the ones that are not gelatos, okay, there's loads of them around, silky crayons and whatnot. They're all essentially the same thing. They're all essentially the same consistency, the same principle. But I find that the colors and the color kind of choices in these Kingart ones are the best. You have nice kind of dopamine colors, like Langor calls them. Essentially kind of even some neons. You have kind of a nice kind of soft bright pastels. You have some difficult colors, you know, they're not just kind of a harsh primaries, they're very chemical colors. They are, you know, a bit tertiary. There's quite a few kind of a tertiaries and kind of a more muted colors. You know, look at those blues. You know, I actually, through that lid, you can't really see very well. But, you know, these are all kind of a bit dusty, a bit muted, you know, more interesting colors. There are, of course, primaries here as well, but I am very grateful that they have these more complicated colors here as well. You know, here, look at the earth tones here. You know, there's some nice muted greens also, along with kind of a spring greens. But even the spring greens aren't now kind of, you know, kind of those awful, really chemical colors. They're absolutely usable, especially if you combine them with darker colors. The gold is actually very bright, which, you know, sometimes is hard to find. The buzzing you can hear is somebody switched on the shower. We have a pumped shower because water pressure here isn't that great. So to have a decent shower, you kind of need to have electric pumped shower. So it makes a lot of noise, you know, somebody takes a shower and the house is shaking. So yeah, the gold is really nice and bright. And this particular one, there's several kind of metallic versions. And there's also a set, okay, this one is also, you have white, you have black. I prefer to have the swatches of these like this, you know, that I can see exactly. They're taped onto the lid of the boxes they come in, so I can see underneath here, you know, what it looks like. Although with these ones, the swatches aren't really badly needed because you can see, you know, that the stick itself, that's exactly the color you're going to get. So in many cases, I probably wouldn't have even, you know, swatched them, but, you know, might as well. They're handy if you want to have a kind of a quick overview, especially like through the lid like this. They're handy to view. So these ones are quite mostly metallics. There's quite a lot of metallics in this set, and these are also mostly metallics, you know, but slightly different colors. For some reason, this and this only box doesn't have a swatch, but it's fine. You can see the colors anyway. And yeah, they're all metallics, and another really kind of a bright metallic yellow, gold, whatever, you know, yellow gold, the gold yellow. So there, these ones, they are, you know, they work pretty much as any of them. They are strong, they are bright, and I thought we might make a background with them. But, you know, first I'm going to show you the same way. Okay, so let's take, you know, this is what they look like. They are slightly less chunky than gelatos. I find that they have this kind of a grabbing area here, slightly texturized. I really like it. They're really nice to hold. You know, they're nice and sturdy. There's plenty of material in there, more than distressed crayons anyway, you know, at least it's thicker. But, you know, all of them, you know, look, of course, you know, the ones in the plastic corpus like this, you know, they all look deceptively like there's a lot of it, whereas there's actually, you know, maybe about this much here of the actual stick. So if you look at them and think, oh, it's all, you know, that's how much of the gel crayon or kind of a crayon you get. It's like, no, you don't. It's about half, and maybe even not half of the length of the, you know, body of the crayon. So once again, you know, they go down really soft. You can do the finger smoothing. You can do water blending. But the thing is, but now, especially with these ones, and more so these ones, I don't know if you can see, more so with these ones than with gelatos. You can see how it becomes gloopy when you dissolve it directly on the paper. I call it soapy. And I don't really like that consistency and the way it moves on the paper. It's hard to get kind of even coverage. You get those kind of often streaky finish if you don't really, work it aggressively to get the smooth finish. Now I have to go and try to close the door because not only is one person on the shower, another one switched on a hairdryer. So everything that can be buzzing is buzzing. I think my kids have now decided to stop sabotaging my video. Yeah, if things happen, they happen in multiples. As I said, one of them was taking a shower, another one was blowing her hair, and dog, who hates the sound of the hairdryer, kicked the door open here, to come into this room, to get away from the hairdryer noise, and as a result, everything became particularly loud. So I apologize. Yeah, things happen. This is the life. Anyways, let's try to put down a background. It is, this is how I would usually use the gel crayons. And things that I would do first, okay? I will usually put with a washi tape or kind of painter's tape or whatever tape you have. Of course, repositionable tape that you can take off afterwards. I don't just put tape there, I actually tape a sheet of paper there because sometimes the brush needs to move pretty wide and you can still get, if you don't put the paper there, you can get kind of a smears onto the next page if you don't pay attention, and sometimes you get carried away, at least I do, and I don't pay attention. And then I also will put a page here. This is the book now I just got from a wonderful Michelle, who sent me lovely happy books, and I really love this book. Wonderful paper, and really kind of a cool line art. Adore it. Anyways, side tangent. So what do I use? Well, you've all seen it, but I can repeat it. These are the brushes that I like the best for it. They're usually called blending brushes. Originally, I think they were created for applying makeup and foundation and kind of blending it out. But we colorists and crafters have pretty much taken over and love to use these ones for different kind of purposes, for ink and for gel crayons like this. So they're really nice. The main thing about it is that the bristles are super tight, and there's a lot of them, so there's almost no give in that brush. They're so tightly together and so thick, so it really kind of keeps instead of sinking into the brush, the crayon or the ink kind of stays on the surface, and that's what makes it so nice to blend with them. And of course they come in different sizes. You can do kind of tiny areas with them. There's also these brushes, which if you want to kind of do more detailed and small areas, they're also kind of the same, not quite as tight as these, but quite close. And these small ones are quite tight as well, if you need to do like tiny bits and areas here. But to be honest, most of the cases I just use kind of that sort of a size. I go over everything, I'm not being careful at all, and then I afterwards just erase everything that goes into the thing. You don't get it off totally, like there will be kind of a slight kind of a toned area there, but it doesn't bother at all, and the pencils will totally go over it and disguise it. And in my opinion, it actually makes the color harmonies work better, kind of it makes the page more cohesive, the little undertone that sometimes happens because of it. So I'm mostly probably going to use these two brushes. And another thing that is really handy, do I have a piece of paper here handy? I should. Where's my notebook that I keep losing? Okay, when you are, actually I can do just there, that actually makes sense. When you first put you start with lighter colors, you don't start with darkest. And in this case, let's decide where we put the kind of this lilac down, and you have to kind of work it into your brush at first. Eventually, as you keep blending and kind of smearing it around, it spreads on the bristles, but you have to work in the beginning a little bit to kind of get it like this onto the brush, and it won't be all over it. And there are areas when it's kind of thicker, and areas when it's thinner, and you can get kind of very blotchy finish if you just slam it on the paper. So usually a good idea is to just smear it over like this, lightly put it over scrap paper next to you before you decide to put it on the paper. But this is a very light color anyway, so this one usually don't show much splotches or anything. It's the kind of darker colors that will give you kind of those unexpected kind of almost stains on the paper. So where do we put it? Maybe we can do the kind of a pink going like this, and maybe like almost diagonally, and maybe in this corner. Okay, so just circular movements and try to get as close to the edge here as possible. And as I said, because it's a light color, you don't really get much of a splotchiness. I decided to speed up the video because A, the video was getting too long, and B, my kids were as subtle as quiet as a bunch of grumpy woolly mammoths while I was recording it, so sound was not great. So as you can see, and as I mentioned before, starting from the lighter tones, tapping off the excess constantly onto the scrap paper, or in this case, the protective paper. And you can see here I'm going from the edge in to get kind of a soft blended out result. So, working from the edges, that I have found the best way to go. This is from my stamping days. And one of the things that you kind of have to keep in mind that can get you burnt, here it happens that if you apply a little bit too much pressure, or if the consistency of the gel is slightly different, like it's quite wet when I put it down, then it can actually push aside. You can get those kind of like white stain situations. So the only way to avoid that is keep very, very gentle pressure on the brush, not put much pressure on it as well, kind of let the pigment build up very gently, very gradually. But if it does happen, it can be fixed. But in this case, you kind of have to put deliberate pressure on it. You can see, essentially same thing happened there. And I kind of, pressed on the brush and kind of created more blended out area, and put some other color in there as well in that area to kind of have more dramatic results. And you can probably see how I'm going pretty boldly into the image here. I'm not trying to protect and be careful at the edges of the clouds and the pufferfish at all. And I have my reason for it. You can do it, in more careful way. Absolutely. And you can use smaller brushes. But I actually want that shading and that kind of a tone on the paper. So you can see in very short while, why. And here I'm using the electric eraser. The one I'm using is Derwent rechargeable one, and the rechargeable bit is why I bought it. I find it very, very handy because I don't have to fiddle with batteries. I can just stick it onto the cable. And you can see here, it takes the most of the gel pen off. Not all. You can, you will get kind of like toned effect, which I like because it does kind of make things eventually more cohesive even if you put pencils on top of it. But if you don't have to do that. And here you saw what I'm actually doing with it. I left that kind of almost shading on the clouds and on the pufferfish. And I'm now kind of going over it with the water brush to kind of blend it out and soften it out. And now I can go on top of it with other media or with pencils or watercolor or even alcohol markers and create different colors there and shading. And this is how the base looks like now. Basically, I didn't bother erasing inside those stars. Maybe I will eventually, but I doubt it because the plan is to kind of cover them with something shiny or metallic, so there's no point really erasing in there. As I explained, usually it's better to let it dry a little bit before you start erasing, because it kind of erases better then. But I'm kind of pressed for time now. It was late in the evening and I wanted to finish filming this video, so I decided to go in and just erase right away after finishing. Now, how to clean your brushes. What I usually do is I take a piece of tissue or a cloth, whatever, and I just rub it, kind of excess out of it right away. That's when, because if you have brushes for specific color, like I do, blue brush for blue, you don't have to kind of do soap and water every time, because, it's going to be blue. But then I'm going to take anyway a baby wipe, or I spray some water onto a cloth and I'm rubbing it quite forcefully against the baby wipe like this, and I'm going to kind of fold it over and kind of basically rub color out of it like this. Just fold it as many times as you can so you don't waste. And same would work with just kind of reusable cloth as well. And then when you wipe it onto the dry one, now pretty much all the color is gone. If you want to, you can do baby wipe a bit more, but there's barely anything now coming out of it. So yeah, there's pretty much nothing. If you really press hard, you get some color still coming, but you don't really, you never go that deep. So this brush can now be put away for next use, but I would use it for blue again. So this is how I clean them, if I want to just kind of quickly finish doing my stuff. So yeah, this is how I mostly use gel crayons. I have to say I haven't done gel crayon backgrounds for a while, so I'm a bit out of practice. I should do it more because I actually like the look of them, and I like the fact that I just I don't have to, usually I don't mask anything or do anything. I just go over the line art and erase out if things are kind of go in too much. I went like really boldly, and usually I do try to kind of not to go in too much, but here I just went in all over the place. If you want to work tidier, then you're better off kind of using smaller brushes, kind of narrow brushes, and kind of those straight brushes maybe near the line art. They're all cosmetic brushes, the cheap, you usually get them in sets of many, depending, on the listing. And they work wonderfully for both this and if you want to do inks as well. I thought I would make a video about inks as well, because I do have some, but, they are kind of remnants mostly from my card making and stamping and kind of like mixed media days. So I have used them less than I should, and I should really find, you know, use them more in my coloring books as well, because they actually do give lovely results. But with inks, obviously, you do need to mask the image if you do, you know, anything like this, kind of a big background. But the result is lovely. So that's all I wanted to say about gel crayons and water-soluble crayons today. Not much really. I once again, you know, after you're finishing it, you know, after you let it dry now, I let it kind of dry for a day at least. And you can actually add pencil on top of it as well. It kind of dries eventually kind of matte. So I find that, you know, to get kind of a smooth, multicolored, or just a smooth background like this, I think they're great. You know, they're really versatile tools, and you could use them as watercolors as well, of course, but I don't really like them as watercolors. The gel crayons, I do like, obviously, Neocolors, you know, the actual crayons as watercolors, but these ones, I don't really like the texture of them, the kind of the gloopiness of them. They don't really go down nice. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully, you know, you saw something interesting or useful. Have a lovely morning or evening or afternoon, or whatever the time is in your corner of the world. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe. It would really help my channel. Leave a comment. I'm delighted to see every single comment, and I do try to answer to every single one. If I'm a little bit late, please, you know, don't be cross with me. You know, life. I get, you know, certain days during the week when I, you know, kind of have a chance to sit down and look at the comments, but I can't do it every day. So sorry if I don't respond right away, but I will eventually respond. I do try to do that always. So thank you very much, and have the best ever creative time. Have health, have happiness, and bye-bye.